Hi and welcome back to the Freese Watches channel, and thanks for coming back for another video. In today's video we're going to mark the occasion of the release of the 101 369 with an interview with myself and my business partner William Roberts. William Roberts is a known collector in the world of the Omega Speedmaster, and we've been on this journey together for a couple of years now, making watches, coming up with designs, and we've really enjoyed it. And what we wanted to do was just to talk a bit more about the idea behind the 101 369 dial watch that we've designed. So in a minute we're going to skip over to an interview with myself and William where we talk about these watches. I hope it'll be of some interest to you. Well, the 369 is like a continuation model, if you like. We started with the 101 well over 2 years ago now. It was an idea conceived by myself and William, and as we've made watches, we've continued to evolve with what we do. And so the 369 was really a way of continuing with the 101, but to bring a fresh angle to the watch and to hopefully evolve what we do in terms of watchmaking, as the dial has got a lot more elements to it, and it has made a few challenges along the way to try and reach the point where we're happy with it.
That's the first 101.
That's the first one.
That's the first 101,
Yep.
and that was the first one we made, and for me. And I said to you, I said, take the loom almost too far. And as a matter of fact, it's the watch that when I wear it, it gets the most appreciation because the colour is so nice. You did a really good job there.
I think the idea was to get it as close as we could to being too far without it being
too far. Yes, that's a lovely watch.
Knowing where the limits were.
Yeah. So that the 101, that was the first. That was the first thing, and then we made a 102, which we haven't got here. No. Yes, we have. It's here. This is my 102. That's my 102, and that has one of the coloured dials on it, which I really like. Not everybody likes those. And then what? Yes, then you went to the 369.
Yeah. So the idea came about because I was reading an article online about the Vanessa Redgrave 5513, which was a watch that is not necessarily known as the Vanessa Redgrave, but it's not known as a sort of 369 dial 5513. They're generally quite sought after. And the article was just really the idea of the article was to readdress the balance about what this watch is and what it should be called. Should it be called the Vanessa Redgrave? But I was just scrolling through the article, and then the photograph of the watch came up, and I looked at it and thought, that looks like one of our watches. And that's where the idea came from. I thought, well, we could perhaps make that because it would be nice to, as our watch has got a hint of a 5513 appearance to it. It'd be nice to sort of take that next step and to make something that was quite difficult to obtain, really, to create the a 5513 style watch with a 369 dial. We have changed the design of the dial slightly, but overall I think what I wanted to capture was the feel of that watch. A vintage watch with an unusual dial, but made as a new watch, and give us something that we would be able to make.
There's another reason why we do this, and that's when you said, what about 369? That day my wife had said, I really like the Explorer dials, why don't you make one of those?
Yeah, right.
And so it was serendipity when you said we want to make a 369. It was good, and I like the green accents that we put in there.
Yeah, that's right. Certainly has made. It's really surprised me actually, because it's like a completely different watch. I mean, really, the initial idea was just change the dial, really, but I think it's got its own sort of personality and character now. And
yes, because every single watch is different. So these are. Would you call these a handmade watch?
Well, I can't think of another watch that you could buy in this sort of area, in this price area, which has as much labour go into it. It's a bit of an indulgence, really, to put that much labour into a watch. But what we found is that William spends his time buying these similar sort of watches online, and what we found is that when you compare a watch that has that amount of work in it with something that is manufactured mass-produced, there's a complete difference in the way they look. A mass-produced item can get sort of 80% of the way there, but there's a little extra something that you get from the involvement of the time that we spend on them. So it's not just the physical time of printing the dials in the traditional way. It's also to do with the time spent on the aesthetic side of the watches, because they're unique. We look at each one individually, and we have to feel comfortable with how it looks before we're sort of happy with it to be sold. So that process is something that obviously can't happen in a mass production situation, and that's really the unique character that these watches have, that is in many ways missing from a mass produced item, just simply because it's about the amount of time and human energy that's put into the watch, which shows in the end result.
But how do you find selling them? If you take a photograph of this watch, for example, and put it up and say you can buy this watch, once that's gone, it's gone. So you then have to take another photograph of another watch. So
yes,
they're individual watches,
yes,
aren't they?
They are individually sold as well.
Yes.
So yeah, we have to photograph each watch individually. You can't put the generic photograph up of the watch and say it's this watch and it's available at this price. They all have to be photographed individually. So the whole process becomes that much more labour intensive, and in honesty, it's not a very good business model. We're not supposed to do it that way, but
not really.
At the same time, when we started out making watches, the idea was that we were always, we make a watch and we're happy with how it looks, and it's the only way we found to do it. Really, is to make a watch, individually, so that we can be happy with the appearance, especially when all the components are, aged individually. So amongst these watches, we have different finishes on the dials there. For example, we have a 369 where the lume is sort of quite a creamy colour, and then we've got some darker ones. But as soon as you change one element, it affects all of the other elements of the watch. So, for example, we have two sort of gold bezel versions that we've made, but the lume colour, because the lume colour is different, the bezel, it changes the colour of the bezel significantly. And quite often these details are quite hard to see unless you actually see the watches in person, because looking at a watch in isolation, it may look in one particular way. When you look at it next to another one, then the differences become clear. We've got a chap who works for us, Martin, who's a design engineer, and I was telling him about this on Friday because we had a meeting, and he came and had a look at the watches, and he said, "Well, I've got a vintage Volkswagen Transporter." Which is white, and I always think it's white until I park it next to another white car in the car park, and then I realise it's not white, it's like off-white, it's kind of creamy colour. But that's the difference really, is that you don't really notice these things in isolation until you actually look at the watches as they are now. Then you can see how each watch is unique and how the subtle differences sort of add up to create something that is quite individual.
So how easy is it, supposing you put this up on the site and it sells, and somebody sees the photograph and they say, "Simon, I want one exactly like that one."
Well, these two watches are a case in point, because this watch is sold. So I wanted to make another one, and that's what I've ended up with. And
that's a different colour dial, different colour loom.
Everything's different.
Yes.
It is quite hard, and it's hard because everything's done by hand, so the results are quite unpredictable. I mean, it's like with the bezels and the aging process. I mean, I'm probably exaggerating to say we throw away more than we keep, but it's probably it's probably not far off of that situation. You just get a feel for what you think is right, and whether you're comfortable with the end result. And so each watch is unique, mainly because of the way that we make them.
It strikes me that you spend a lot of time on each dial, each bezel, each set of hands, and then you match what looks best.
Yes. Well,
what you're actually doing is what all the Rolex people have been doing for years with their optimization.
Yes.
Stripping a watch and then assembling from many watches.
That's right.
But what we're doing is creating aesthetically pleasing watches from parts that you spend hours creating, and as you say, throwing away half of them because they become too damaged. I think it's a very exciting concept, actually, because they're unique. And you didn't one sell recently on eBay?
Well, we've had a few sales. It's been interesting, actually. We have had a few sales. We've had in the aftermarket,
secondary market.
Yeah.
You've made it when you're selling them on the secondary market.
I feel a bit. I mean, you feel a bit self-indulgent, but I phoned there's a well-known watch dealer who's just sold one. I phoned him up to ask him how much he sold it for, and it was significantly more than the watch was what I sold it for, which is curious to me because.
They could ring you up and get one.
That's right.
But it wouldn't be the same, and that's the point, isn't it?
Well, that's right. I mean, the first one that this happened to went on the Amiga forums, which is it's a popular watch forum online, and that watch sold quite quickly. And I think it was because we made the first 10. You specified a slightly off black bezel, which is like brown colour for number 1, and I had a couple of purple bezels, so 2 purple bezel watches. And they were quite in demand at the time, and one of those sold recently, and I think that's why once again that was unique, almost unique. There were 2 purple bezels. One was more purple than the other, actually, from memory. And that's the thing. As it's a unique watch, it can be a bit like with a vintage watch. It can be assessed on its aesthetic merits at the time, depending on whether it is visually appealing. Yeah.
So the 369s, when do they get released?
So the release is going to be in about 2 weeks from now, but obviously I'm saying that on video, and we've got to edit the video and get that out there. So we're probably 2 or 3 weeks away. So we're probably going to be mid-May.
And how much are we selling them for?
$899 UK pounds. So
yes.
That's inclusive of.
And we've sold quite a few to America, haven't we?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so the situation with selling to the States is that we do a sort of subsidised shipping. So
yes.
We charge. The shipping is quite expensive. What we're doing is using an international priority shipping to make sure the watch goes straight through, and that way we're sort of splitting the cost. So we're charging 30 UK pounds for shipping on those. But
well, I have to say, I think they look fantastic. I love the green accents. I love the variation in the bezel. I think you've done an amazing job.
Thanks. Thank you.
Good.
I'm very pleased with them. Well, thanks for sticking with us during the video. I hope the interview was of some interest and gave you some insight in the way that myself and William work together to produce the watches. There are a number of watches available for sale now on the website. We've got 4 or 5 of these now that are now listed and available for sale. Please feel free to head over. It's www.freesewatches.uk. So thanks again for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and it will help us to grow, and we'd really like you to share the journey that we're going on. So thanks again, bye for now.